Hello, and welcome from the Golan Heights. It's your episode for this week. I'm here in the saddle, as always, with Samai Deng. Samai,
hello,
how do you do?
You should pass me back those copies of the Little Red Book. We gotta redistribute them to the members of the PFLP. They're waiting out back.
It's been a very busy week for us. Joining us today is Quixote, who is a scholar and an activist in Chiang Mai, who works with ethnic minorities, and that's predominantly upland minorities. Is that right?
Sure, yeah, you can say that. Hello?
Yeah. So today we're talking about, just want to get one thing out of the way. We're talking about what many people will know as hill tribe people, and we don't really like that word at all. We prefer upland people, or maybe Kondoi or something like that. And actually, just to get derailed quite quickly early on, I was talking to an English person the other day about Isan, and I was explaining how they're ethnically Lao, and he asked me like, but what tribe are they from? And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, you got those two over there.
Sucks. Anyway, so we brought in Quixote here into Bandindeng to talk about the upland Karen town of, how is this pronounced? Cambodin? Is that right?
Gabudin?
Gabudin?
Yeah,
okay. Which is in Omkhoi in Chiang Mai province.
Yeah.
And so right now there's a project to basically nuke the town and turn it into a coal mine. So, Quixote, do you want to kind of start off by telling us about Omkhoi kind of pre-mine? Because I've never actually been there. I've been nearby, but I'm wondering what the place is like, and what are the people like there?
Well, it's pretty far away from any urban center. A lot of dirt roads. They do got electricity. The people, it's just like any other nice kind of rural village in the mountains, very scenic, natural, nice air, you got the streams, you got all the nice crops they got everywhere, and the village, the community itself too, welcoming of everyone. So just, I guess even now, right? So they do a lot of, they do that shifting cultivation. They grow a lot of crops also to sell. They do some terrace rice farming.
And they're a self-sustaining community?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone's really self-sustaining these days, right? But
sure.
But yeah, they probably grow for themselves first, and then sell, surplus, and then try to buy some other stuff,
So, something I've found in these communities is that there's kind of this contradiction. Is often they're in incredibly beautiful areas of great beauty and abundance in terms of the ecology and the nature that surrounds them. But then at the same time, the local people are often living in poverty, the very, very poor people. Yeah. So, I imagine this is the same thing there, right?
Yeah, and I guess it's what perspective you want to, get at, what exactly is this poverty, right? Because a lot of them don't want this kind of development, right? They don't want the roads and kind of this modern, what we think is, modern. And I mean, of course, they want kind of medicine, and these things. But a lot of these indigenous groups, they're kind of critiquing the Western style of progress, right? Development. So, but it's not, you can't really say they all are the same, right? You'll have, even within the community, you'll have different opinions and power relations. So, there'll probably be some people who want all these things and maybe even want the mine, right? Because they want jobs or something, right? What happened in Memo. And, and then you have other, groups, I guess I've heard the, neo-indigenous type of thing, get back to the roots and critique development. So you have this group, right? And then they're all kind of influenced by all the outsiders who go, right, as well. All the NGOs, capacity building and teaching them how to express their own problems in a different way, right? So it's pretty difficult, right, to see exactly what they want, right, and be a representative of them or speak for them.
Yeah, if you recall back to the sort of episode where we did Thailand as a settler colonial state, goddammit, those subaltern groups that sort of still exist within the I guess the framework of the Thai state, they still manage to practice I don't want to say the word tradition, but their systems and relations still haven't been aligned necessarily with the Thai state ideology, and so their practices as a subaltern group will continue to be a sort of a check to that power, to that legitimacy. So that's an important thing from what I can gather.
And so, I mean, and this kind of brings into sharp focus the issue of the mine. Now, this project to build a mine there has been going on for quite a while. I think it started in 2000, right? Could you kind of tell us like how the decision was made to build a mine there and some of the tactics that the mining company and the state have used to kind of, fool these people, basically, from what I understand?
Yeah, so I guess in 2000, right, some of these articles have wrote about this, and the locals also told me some. But yeah, I guess they were trying to do this, I guess this company, I'm going to say it even though I'm a bit afraid, but this company, Thai business, I guess, they went in there looking at the land, right, to see if it was had any potential and if there's, resources there, right? And I guess they would lie, not really lie, but they wouldn't express their motivations, behind buying some of this property from the community.
So they started going in there buying up property.
If anything, it was always maybe a minority of people who would be willing, because they don't have land titles as well. So it feels like maybe they don't know, like, this might be sketchy. Can we actually sell land that's not ours as well? But they would say, right, like, if you don't sell, we'll take it anyway, and you won't get any money. So it seems like kind of pretty common, I think, how this is done, especially with these kind of groups who don't speak Thai, or maybe they do, but the elders don't, right? And
I mean, just to underscore it, like, this is, these are pretty vulnerable people when coming up against like a very high-powered mining company with corporate offices in Bangkok, compared to an incredibly rural group who, like you say, aren't even Thai, have very little contact with the Thai state. I mean, it's easy to, I don't want to say swindle them, but basically, right?
And it seems like they always have this kind of, like, just extreme respect towards outsiders, right? Like, oh, they have education. They are, like, sometimes it seems like they respect too much, I remember sometimes I would go and they would always say Ajahn to me, I'm not Ajahn, I'm just here to study. I'm here to learn from you. I'm just some student, And if you have some big company...
I got the same thing with like a lot of like migrant workers from Burma who I would speak to in Thai, and they would call me P even though I was older than them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's
no. Well, that sounds correct.
No. Sorry. They were older than me. Sorry, I got it the wrong way around. Yeah. So it's awkward. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Really, go on.
And then I guess it seemed like no one really heard about it again, this project. In the articles, it said 2011 it was approved by the government. And I guess they were conducting an EIA. But I don't understand really, during this time, those 10 years, they were doing an EIA. So I don't know, it seems like
Could we explain what an EIA is?
Yeah, it stands for Environmental Impact Assessment. And generally, it's a type of like a UN kind of concept, right? Where in order to do some mega project, or maybe even a small-scale development project, you have to get a EIA, right? The company has to get an EIA, and many other ones too. They have the SIA, Social Impact Assessment, but the company has to get it, and they pay for this, right? And they pay these like consultancy agencies who do this. So it's kind of, you don't know if there's what's going on there, like.
There's definitely potential for sketchy stuff to happen,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
In terms of just granting them paying for a social report or an environmental report when really the criteria hasn't been met at all.
Sure.
The other weird thing is that instead of it, because the EIA is supposed to serve as like us checking the the direction of a company, say, for example. But
Yeah.
nowadays, you like when I left Bangkok, I saw billboards that had EIAs like on their development projects. They mentioned like they'd done an EIA, things about EIAs. So now it's like also they're starting to use it as a way to sort of, I don't know, make their development. They have to advertise it basically, so they can seem green as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's kind of green.
Oh, so it's like a greenwashing
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
as well.
yeah. So it's sort of been like subtly co-opted
Yeah,
in that
exactly.
way. Yeah.
Like everything, it seems like, right?
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Whatever we do, they co-opt it.
So they came up with this proposal to build this mine, and can you kind of explain like some of the damage that this would do to the village and the surrounding area in terms of the people and the ecology?
Well, so the project is about 280 right? It's pretty big.
Which is in can we get that in a imperialist unit of measurement?
I think 45 hectares. Is that what HA?
Right. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Is HA supposed to be hectare? Yeah.
So that's
What about like
in terms of square kilometers, that's 0.448 square kim.
okay, and that's just for the mine itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so I mean, yeah. So some of the impacts is, I guess because they rely on the streams there, right? Because they do, terrace agriculture, terrace rice farming.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about the rain, right? So they need irrigation, and they get their water from the streams, right? And those streams will be in that area, and they'll be affected by whatever wastes come from that. Yeah, and then I guess some other things like dust, right? Because they have to transport it to the main road, which is a long way, and they're dirt roads. And I guess 6 communities will be impacted. It's not just Gabadin. They got, like they said, 41 plots will be lost. And
Is that 41 homes?
I don't know. I just read plots. I don't know exactly
Okay.
how big. But I mean, it's for them. That's the thing about these numbers things, right? Is maybe for us it seems small, right? But for them, it's like their whole livelihood. Yeah.
So I mean, would it wipe the village completely off the face of the earth, or would the village theoretically still be able to survive?
I'm not sure exactly. I couldn't tell you for sure.
And the local people don't know either.
I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric going around, so, but no one really knows exactly how it's going to happen, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, like they'll lose their livelihood,
And so, what has been the response of the local people once they found out about this? Because they didn't realize about these plans for quite a while, right?
Yeah, it was right on like 20 years later, almost 19 years. Yeah, so they found, I guess in their municipal office over there was a notice saying, that they want to meet everyone to tell them about this project that's already been kind of accepted, right? Yeah. And that's when they found out, right? And then right away they started kind of organizing. Some youth groups started organizing everyone, getting everyone together. Seems like a month afterward, they already start setting up a network of anti-mine. What is it? The anti-mine, Omkoy anti-mine network, or network to end. I don't know, all these different translations, right?
Sure.
But I mean, they've been doing a lot of things, right? So a lot of going around to all the small villages, and communities around there, kind of spreading the knowledge, what's going on. Eventually, during, I guess it was World Environment Day, they got 2,000 people to come together, show their opposition for that day, right? World Environment Day.
And sorry, how many people live in the village?
Gabadin, it's just like you got these hamlets, like even smaller than the village. So it's, I'm not sure exactly, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
Maybe
less than 1,000?
Yeah, for sure. At least the main area, maybe 500 or 300 or something. A couple households, not many households. Yeah, so I mean, that was pretty big, just to see them. And these are kids, these are middle school kids. Seemed like they were quickly able to get everyone together and unite for this cause. Yeah, so they go to the city center, I guess, the district center, to show their opposition. And it's been kind of activities like this for a while. Every couple months there's something big. They find out about some new meeting. Maybe the government says you can't go about it like this, So then they said, they can't postpone the meeting, because the locals, maybe they hear about a meeting with the company and find out maybe they're not informed yet on all the information, so they need more time to, prepare. And then the government or the company will say, this is not how it works, you have to go through this certain system, So then they just go and disrupt the meeting. Right?
It's mostly young people, you said?
The leaders seem like the youth group.
Wow.
It's mostly done by the youth group. At least the locals. You got all the NGOs and, CBOs coming in, giving their input and helping them, capacity training and teaching them, I guess, how to...
It sounds like you're not a fan.
I don't know.
So, I've also heard about some of the protest organizers or the community organizers are being harassed by maybe the police, maybe private citizens who are paid to harass them. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so when I first went there and I was kind of taking pictures of these kind of workshops they were doing, and I took some pictures of the actual EIA report, this big book, and it showed the company name. And when I kind of posted it, some of the locals or the leaders, youth group, they were like, hey, please, can you take that down? And da-da-da. I said, all right, I understand. But
Can you explain why?
Yeah, I guess this is related to the SLAPP law.
Yeah.
So
the slander law.
Yeah, slander law, right? I guess it stands for strategic lawsuit against public participation, right? So it's where these big kind of companies just sue you, into debt, and they just keep it going forever.
For defamation.
Yeah, for defamation. Yeah. So yeah, I guess, but some of the leaders did this, right? They also posted the name, right? And they charged these two guys. Yeah, I guess it's still going on.
And so what about the harassment?
They're just, getting them with this defamation law, right? The SLAPP law, right? And then it kind of uses up a lot of resources, financial resources, from the NGOs, from civil society that's trying to help them, the lawyers. And as far as I know, it's still going. They keep on denying it. They're saying that this is just, we didn't say anything that's like they're not accusing it. They're just saying, right? Like this company, you could see it. This company did the EIA, right? But we're not saying any lies, right? So they keep on denying it, but they're like following the procedure, right? They're going to the, meeting the lawyers, so it seems just to drag it out, right? Like another strategy.
It kind of seems like 112, but against businesses,
Yeah. A lot of people, right? There was another guy who just got some British, right? Labor activist. I think it was similar.
Company.
Yeah, the pineapple.
Yeah.
Oh!
Samai, did you have...
Yeah, this wasn't or something like that. It was that company. Yeah, that guy is a master. That guy is a master.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to beep out these company names to be safe.
Well, yeah, again, about this harassment, right? As far as I know, like, they would be posting a lot of... I wasn't there when this happened, but I guess last year, for a while, these, I don't know who they are, but these trucks, right, would just go and drive into the village, right? And maybe some uniformed, some not, and kind of just asking, who's in charge, I guess, and, just trying to get information from the locals of who's kind of leading this thing, right? And
so it's like a intel, but in a very intimidating way, right?
Yeah. Sure.
That's quite classic. I've experienced that personally in like these kind of areas. Like the police will like very heavy-handedly and clumsily show up and do like very clumsy questioning. Where it's almost like they it's quite silly actually when you actually see it, because like you kind of think of these operations as being, quite slick and, they've got undercover agents or something like that. But in reality, quite more often than not, they'll just like show up in a massive fucking pickup truck and like stand in the middle of the town with their uniforms and just pull people aside and question them.
Yeah. That's what it seemed like, looking at these.
Yeah.
Very, very conspicuous, not very subtle.
At all.
No, but I think, like the shock of oh my god, people just showed up in the fucking in a pickup truck to ask us questions. Like, no, we're disoriented and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it also kind of shows the way the police see themselves. Like, oh, we can just roll up in a place and be assholes.
I'm the sheriff of this town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think for some of these like, far out communities, they don't really know how to, now they're probably learning, right? But when they see these people, they fear, like, if I don't cooperate, I'll get in trouble, right? And then if I, in any way, I'll get in trouble, right? Or something.
Would it be right to think that, like, the police that go out to see them are probably the most consistent representation of the Thai state they come into contact with? Or do they have, like, is there, like, a... Okay, you're nodding. So, yeah. Because, like, that would make sense, then, in terms of relatively, sort of relative importance of the police to them versus the relative importance of a police officer to anyone living in, like, I would guess even Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The lowlands.
Yeah. So, like, I could understand, then, why you would maybe be intimidated or concerned or afraid by a pickup truck with 2 police officers, because, like, oh shit, this they don't usually send people out for us, but when they do, there's something happening. So yeah,
because they don't have police stationed in these little villages, right? These villages kind of deal with it themselves,
Imagine if we could do that.
Self-governing.
Yeah. Another thing I read, at least with, I guess we can just edit it out, right? if it's too much, right? But so this was Greenpeace. They said that this, or I guess this company will be sending the coal to company, right? And we kind of know who that's owned by, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess it's, we can see the kind of the commodity chain, and who's kind of really behind all this, and this coal, but I saw like they came out with a public response saying, no, we don't buy from, companies that have not gone through these kind of environmental and social procedures, right?
That's fucking rich. Have you ever been to Sarapuri?
No,
which is where their biggest plants are. My God, the place is like a hellscape of cement. It's really depressing. So that's pretty ironic.
Yeah.
Saying they care about the environment.
Yeah, and this I was looking too, like, because I guess it's about, because they're saying this is green coal, right? And I guess like
that's an American thing.
Yeah, sure, I'll take it. But I guess there's like 4 types of coal, right? And the dirtiest type is this lignite, and this is at Memol. It's the most common type. It's some dirty type, right? And then we got
dirty.
At Omkoy, they have this special, like, 1 category better, or as in like a little cleaner. So I think this is what they're trying to do, of like, oh, it's green coal because it's a little better than this other one.
They're literally greenwashing the coal.
Yeah, I guess one last thing, I don't know if we can go too much, just one little thing that I think the locals might want people to know is there's another big project coming, and they're starting to prepare for this. And this is from kind of the Salawin River to the Bumipong Dam. They're making like a transfer station. So like now they're starting to prepare to contest 2 different projects, right?
So that would affect Omkoy region as well?
Yeah, it seems like it's going to pass right through it. And this has also been, maybe 20 years in the making, and it's just now that people are hearing about it.
I mean, I think the kind of theme of this story is really, it's something that Mean, who does the Thai version of the podcast, which all our Thai listeners should listen to, always talks about, which is Capitalo parliamentary system, which is kind of government working with large private corporations like hand in glove. So essentially what that means is that it's the government's job to make big business life very easy for big business, and that's exactly what they're doing in pretty much the most awful way possible, which is extraction and destroying the environment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the state facilitating the creation of new markets, just markets that are already there, right? I guess that's kind of what the capitalist state is all about.
And also, you know, it's like it's the resources on another level. Like these resources, coal, even though maybe we don't like these resources because they're dirty or whatever, but at the same time, these are the state's resources that are being given to a private corporation at the same time. So there's like another level of problem right there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and the thing, because it's not just executive and legislature, but it's also judiciary, right? So we talked about the slap before. So it's not only that these groups are being done by insidious, groups like, i.e., the state and corporations, but they have no legal recourse because they're already being done one way by laws.
Like every tentacle of the state is being used to facilitate capital.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, it's the judiciary, it's the executive, and then even down to like the very local levels. So we've spoken before on the podcast about, how the Thai state will facilitate the building of wats, like Buddhist temples in these small non-Buddhist,
But Buddhism isn't a state
villages.
religion. What are you talking about?
And so the idea there is to like Thaiify these people, which is the people we're talking about. Some people accept it, some people don't. But then that makes it easier to make those people beneficial towards the imperial core of the Thai state, right? And this is kind of you see this stuff going on, right? As well as like the very explicit heavy hand of the state, like we're talking about with the police showing up. There's been like this soft power going on there for a long time, right?
Yeah, it's almost like you have to get the state to come in if you want any certain benefits, right? If you want citizenship, if you want some kind of development, right? Education or medicine. I mean, these communities aren't totally isolated, right? I mean, Omkoy sells tomatoes and pumpkins, and they've always been connected to the market, for a long time.
So let's just I just want to expand out a little bit. Like we're saying, upland people in Thailand, they're in extremely precarious positions when it comes to land rights and kind of access to their livelihood. And a lot of the time when we're saying livelihood, we're talking about the environment around where they live. So the forest where they'll go foraging, which they depend upon for food and whatnot. And also they'll usually have like relatively small agricultural areas, and a lot of the time they won't own the land to maybe they'll own the land to their house, but often not in times they won't own the land to the agricultural areas, and certainly they won't be allowed to forage in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that a little bit?
Well, Omkoy is a bit unique, I guess, for me. With all the other Karen villages I've been in, most of them are in the national parks or these special reserves, forest reserves. Omkoy, I do not think they designate it as a degraded forest, right? And this is the thing, like, there's been multiple times in the 80s where forest is designated in this way in order to attract business, right? In order to say, okay, we can start logging here.
So they're like, this is shitty forest, there's no need to protect it.
Yeah, so
right.
In this way, like Omkoy, they still don't have the land titles, right?
So is it that like, is that designation of, what was the term? Degraded forest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that designation essentially, was that put in place to make it easier to do stuff like these mining projects?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know like how kind of conspiracy like this is, right? Like if
we are very conspiratorial on the podcast, so please go ahead.
Because there's many, different designations, right? And they all have different rules of if you can use the products in that forest, if you can collect mushrooms or cut a tree, if it's a watershed. It's just so complex, right? Like every category gets so much more specific, and it, in a way, it seems almost random of how they classify this. It doesn't seem like it's pure science. And then you'll have corrupt forest officials, I mean, I saw some, there was an article, like an academic article about in the 1980s, of Thaksin. I guess people related, not, a guy related to Thaksin, making sure this kind of this area got, not Omkoya, but somewhere else, got designated as a degraded forest. So they were allowed to attract foreign investment, not even foreign investment, I guess some domestic capital, right? To try to just enhance their wealth, I guess, increase their wealth. So it's always complicated within these different departments, you know. Even the state, we can't really act like it's monolithic, right? Like, these departments are always fighting each other and for more power, right? And, you know, some will be pro-Indigenous can live there, you know, because then they'll have more administration, you know, territory. But then the, you know, forestry department will say, no, you know, this is our territory because it's considered forest. So it's a bit complex, you know, in this way, you know.
No, I just wanted to make a really specific specific question about designating forests as degraded forests. Is there any way they can like sort of fudge it so it becomes a degraded forest? Like the criteria that you have, can they expand the forest area to include sort of places where there's bad ecology or something? Like say for example, like there's a forest. 90% of the forest is fine. 10% of it is what makes it degraded. The fact that they've included that 10% within the classification of the forest boundaries allows it to become a degraded forest and therefore expand the amount of like logging that can be done, as opposed to that initial sort of. Do they often like sort of do that kind of gerrymandering type situation?
I couldn't tell you for sure, but I feel like they do. I feel like
I'd be shocked if they didn't.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you know, like all forests, you know, during, you know, especially in the north, you know, when you had Britain and especially Britain, right, who needed all this teak for the, you know, colonization and stuff, you know, it was all in the north. So all of these areas could be considered degraded. You know, it's not natural forest anymore. Even though it's beautiful, it's secondary forest, it seems like anyone can just say, like, this is not the natural forest, therefore it's degraded, you know. Or, you know, yeah, I believe, though, that there's a lot of this type of gerrymandering, I guess, with...
I could sort of describe it.
I mean, so this kind of, just to go back to my earlier question, you know, it seems like, you know, what you described is a bit different from what I described, in that there are a lot of cases where areas that Indigenous people, upland Indigenous people are living, are designated as reserves or something like this, where, you know, you're not allowed to cut down trees, you're not allowed to forage or expand your farmland in any way. And that's often a concern for local people. It's often a big problem for local people. And so they lose in that situation, right? The Indigenous people lose. And it sounds like the Indigenous people lose in the alternative situation when you're allowed to develop in the forest. So it seems like there really is no win for Indigenous upland people.
For sure. It's I mean, it seems like the only reason they were allowed to have this mining go on was because it was classified as degraded, right?
And yeah, you know, it is like a kind of polemic in the conversation about protecting forests, you know, in terms of conservation discourse, in terms of like you have people versus the environment is how it's often framed. But then at the same time, there are a lot of when we're talking about these upland people in Southeast Asia, historically, they have cohabited with the forest in a non-harmful way. And it's when the lowland people start expanding into those areas. Am I wrong about this? You're kind of half shaking your head, half nodding.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just kind of try to watch out for romanticizing, you know?
Sure.
And in a way,
I like that. Yeah.
There's a reason why the Quran are so famous and no one else, you know, no one cares about all these other ethnic groups, right? It's kind of, they have a monopoly on this kind of forest conservation, right? Whereas now the Lahu and the Hmong, they're all forest destroyers, you know? So it's just in that way, you know? But yeah.
So is that symbiosis kind of narrative that I was kind of drawing out, is that how accurate is that historically and contemporarily?
I think they change, you know. I think the Karen are smart, you know, and they've always been able to kind of get around, you know, all the different kingdoms going on, right? They've always stayed, you know, this kind of like Zomia type hypothesis, you know, if you stay away and you keep your head down, like no one's going to take you out, right? I feel like they've kind of used this kind of new kind of indigenous movement to their advantage, right? It's a political strategy. And now you get different ones as well, right? You'll have some Karen groups who are using science instead of local knowledge to support their, you know, that they can live in this land. But I don't know, like when I go to these Karen villages, of course I love the tradition and respect it and stuff, but they're not like some different type of people, right? Like sometimes when we talk about them, yeah, like we're, you know, a little in Marxist kind of thing, right? Where we're all kind of workers, you know, like I'm for cultural difference and all this. But for me, the big thing is they need their land, you know, whereas they're making it about culture. But then that's where it connects, right? The land is their culture, right? The shifting, cultivation, you know, it's this thing about, right? Class versus identity, politics, right? And, you know, I feel like as, you know, Marxism has developed where we were able to, you know, we've seen what we messed up before, right? If you look at all these, like in Vietnam and Laos, right? A lot of the ethnic groups fought against the communists, right? In Latin America as well, because the communists did not respect their culture, right? And their traditions. So I feel like we've moved on past this and we all kind of know, like, all right. But yet it's still here, right? It's still it's a strategy that indigenous groups are still using. And I don't know if it's the right way to go, right?
So you can see the Karen and the other indigenous groups there. Do you think they're like influenced by Western identity politics kind of discourse and they're kind of moving in that direction?
I think so. I think, you know, we can't act like they're isolated, right? A lot of the knowledge that they get is from outside NGOs and academics coming in, right? I mean, it's all symbiosis, I guess. We're all sharing knowledge, right? But we can't act like we have isolated, authentic groups on the one hand and then like kind of Thai imperialism or Western imperialism on the other, right? This dualist. It's a little simplified, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we're guilty of that, frankly. But it is hard to draw these incredibly nuanced narratives at the same time. You know what I mean?
But yeah, when I go, I love, you know, the culture of like food and maybe going to the weddings and seeing them, you know, tie something on the hand, right? And spirits and spirit houses and different ways of farming. They have their own way of life, but in the end of the day, it's still economics, right? And the land, they need that land, right? And without that land, they don't have their identity.
It to go back to what you say about land rights being their identity and the differentiation between us and them being limited, absolutely, because like, you know, you take away the matter that's being presented is two matters when in reality it is one. They say one, there's a question of indigenous culture, and then the other one there is a question of indigenous access to land. The real question is about the relationship between culture and access to land, and so it's more about it's less about culture and access to land, and it's more about them as a group being allowed to sort of operate in a way they wish to operate, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're talking about self-determination, right? And that's really what we could ask for. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, not to go off in a bit, but self-determination is the weirdest part of neoliberalism, or whatever you want to call the governing system of the world. So every country has self-determination, but groups inside countries that wish to become like equitable to the power of a current country doesn't have the right to self-determination. We saw
democracy, baby. You just produce more people,
we need to
get right to determination.
We need to stop seeing like the state.
Yeah.
There's a lot of internalized statism. And I don't mean statism in like the bootlicking way. I mean like in believing the primacy of the nation state as the most democratic form of governmental organization or social organization. Yeah. So it's one of those situations.
It's strange to me too, you know, how even these communities, right? These Karen communities, once they, you know, you have some organizations that unite them, right? All these different Karen communities but they also seem a bit, you know, they're all Karen, you know, and they have similar problems, but they don't seem too much like they're brothers and sisters or something. And more so if they're talking about the Karen state in Burma, you know, with Thai Karen. For me, it's, you know, it's just like, because, you know, it's about if we want change, right, then we have to somehow create some unity and solidarity, right? And yet it still seems like it's so local, right? Like after, let's say, Omkoy wins, like I know Hitlat 9, they were huge in the 80s, Karen activist group, right? And then they got kind of, they got some rights to their land, and they can still do shifting cultivation and everything. And now they just do their own thing, right? They're not involved with any other current. You know, maybe they'll do some Facebook posts of, hashtag this or that. But that's the thing about this kind of localism and cultural, like cultural specificity, right? It's all about small local movements, right? It's hard to get them to keep on going and put the collective over this local community, right?
So I know your battery is running out, so I just wanted to go back a little bit and talk about the activism among upland people against this kind of Capitello parliamentary system, which is fucking them over. And I just wanted to highlight that, there have been activists who have been murdered. There have been people do get beaten up. People do, for example, get like there are stories like cops plant drugs in the car and then they arrest them for drugs charges. They go to jail, stuff like this. So this is a real threat, right? And I mean, could you talk a little bit about some of the more heavy-handed responses that have happened in past, and hopefully that isn't in the future for Omkoi, but I think it's important that we know how far the Capitello parliamentary system is willing to go to continue its encroachment.
Yeah, I mean, of course you have what happened recently in that national park, Krachin, this small community that went back up. It's been like a 20 or 30 year thing. And you also got the Billy, right?
They burnt the village down, right?
Oh, Ken Krachan, right? Pechaburi, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also where Billy was, the current activist who was assassinated.
Well, he was disappeared, and then they found his remains.
And then he appeared. Yeah.
Appeared in a barrel, right? So.
Callback.
Yeah, I don't know how bad it gets. Because there's just a bunch of these cases, right, where they get disappeared. Yeah, and I think Thailand is one of the worst one of the most dangerous in regards to journalists and kind of activists that are speaking out against some of these companies or the government. But I don't know too much actually. Like, it's just there's so many cases, right? I don't know. And that's another thing. It's just every year, or every couple months, there's another problem, right? And it's big, and then it fizzles out, right? There's no one trying to create the conditions where, to create a foundation where this can develop. There's just spontaneous anger, and then it fizzles out, right?
And the lack of unity between those different cases, right? Well, on that bleak note, let's just hope that, because we like to end on a note of optimism, let's just hope that the kind of movement, the larger movement in Thailand, democracy movement, whatever you call it, can, I don't know, maybe turn their attention a little bit. We always say this, we say, hey, democracy movement, look at prisons. Hey, democracy movement, look at land rights for upland people, you know what I mean? But yeah, you know what, look at land rights for upland people and living rights and what have you. So, I mean, hopefully, you never know, something might come of it. Personally, I'm a bit skeptical. We didn't even talk about the Thai perception of upland people, which can be pretty bad. But yeah, so I mean, anything else you want to add before we call it a day? Yeah,
I just want to remind everyone, as Gabriel hinted earlier, ecology is a social question. So remember that when we're talking about the nature and the world around us, and we're also talking about how it affects us in a non-hierarchical way, in the sense that we are within nature, not without. Thank you.
The climate crisis is a human crisis. What's the line? The ecological crisis is a social crisis, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Satu.
Yeah. Satu. All right, folks. So thank you very much, Quixote, for joining us, and we'll catch you next week.
Great, dude. Take care. Jagan.
Take care.